So, welcome back to the show. The sponsor for tonight, Jintel, are currently offering a buy one free one promotion, plus an extra free gift and free transportation to all our viewers in conjunction with the Parents' Day celebration. The promotion shall end soon. We all know Father's Day was last week, so I think this promotion will be ended within this week. So anyone who interested on this promotion, please contact or WhatsApp 012-580-5205. So now I invite back Mr. Thomas and Tan Sri Tommy Thomas, and we shall move into chapter 3. The failure. Before that, I need to click first. Yes. Welcome back, Mr. Tan Sri Thomas.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may, now we shall move to the third chapter of tonight's show, which is the failure of Pakatan administration and your views about other politicians in PH administration. We start with a more general question first. No doubt there are many weaknesses and mistakes made by the PH during these 22 months. Nonetheless, if compared with the current government or the government led by Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, I would say Pakatan Harapan's government is still far more better than their counterparts. What makes people angry against Pakatan was that many reforming agenda, as mentioned by Tan Sri just now, were abandoned when they were in power. What is your views about this? Do you think Pakatan government is a complete failure? And on the other hand, there are some merits. Is there any merits in the current government led by Dato Sri Ismail Sabri or previous Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin? Let's go with a big picture first. Compare the current government with the PH administration. Mr. Thomas.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought this up because I discussed this in the book, which is I say that the 22 months that the Pakatan government, Pakatan administration governed the country, there were a lot of improvements. So, for example, just let's take the GST that was abolished. The lot of the lopsided contracts were renegotiated. And then, of course, we prosecuted a lot of wrongdoers from 1MDB. So there were, and then we started fairer contracts with China and other countries, and we were wanting to get into the HSR deal with Singapore, but we needed a bit more time. So I would say that we did a lot of good things, and then we appointed Chief Justice Richard Malanjong, and then later on we appointed Chief Justice Tunku Maimun. And so the PH government did a lot of good things. I think where they seem to have failed was a perception which took effect very, very quickly after they went into power and remained with them, was that they were not fulfilling their manifesto promises. And I think when they started disregarding their manifesto and saying we never expected to win and therefore we don't expect anybody to take it seriously, there were those kinds of statements, and that became a millstone around their neck. But I would still say that they did quite a lot of stuff, and we also had good law reforms. We had the under 18 voting and compulsory registration. So there were law reforms, not enough, but at least a start was made. And again, it's all relative. So if you compare to the government before them, which was Najib's government, which won MDB, which was defeated in the election, and the two governments thereafter, I still say that the PH government did a much better job. And then likewise, when it comes to COVID, I would say that both Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir was a doctor, and the Minister of Health for PH, Zulkifli, they were doing a grand job in COVID. When COVID first made its appearance in Malaysia, which was towards the end of PH's rule. So I would say history would be quite kind to the PH government, particularly relative to other governments.
Yes. 但是的答案是其实他说他在这个 这个问题，他在他的书中也有说到，22个月的希盟政权其实有很多进步，大家没有看到。比如他举例 ，GST 被废除，很多不合理的合同被修改，然后希盟提告了很多 1MDB 做错事的人，然后也跟中国重新谈判。所以他说希盟做了很多好事，而且他们委任了Chief Justice 第一位东马的大法官 Richard Melajan， 还有改革派的大法官现在还在位的登古迈mun Yang Ahmad Arif 登古迈mun。所以他认为其实让人民生气的并不是他们抛弃，因为我问的是抛弃嘛，抛弃了这些改革议程，让人民生气的是他们没有重视他们的 manifesto， 他们的竞选宣言。有人说宣言不重要，有人说没有想到自己会赢，所以宣言乱定，宣言定根本是没有想到要去执行的。对丹斯里而言，这些都是自杀性的言论是自杀性的言论。而且丹斯里也有提到，其实希盟有很多法律改革他都做出了很多改革，而且如果你要比较一个政府的好坏是比较性的，你拿希盟的22 months 22个月跟 Najib 时代跟 Muhyiddin 跟 Ismail Sabri 时代来比，他还是远远好过他们的。所以他说现在你可能发现不到，但是拉长时间来看，用历史的角度来看，他相信在未来大家会明白希盟是更好的政府。好 So my next question, Thomas, many people think that Pakatan forgot about their reforming agenda when power was in their hand. As mentioned by you, they said we never expect we will win, so the manifesto we will just write anything we could. One good example, I give you a good example which is related to you. That is the power of AG. Tan Sri, as I mentioned at the beginning of this program, you have written an article in year 1983, exactly 3 years before I was even born. The title of the article was AG is the most powerful person in Malaysia. And I quote from the said article, last paragraph, the powers of the Attorney General make nonsense the doctrine of separation of power. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The power of the Attorney General has increased since Merdeka, is increasing and ought to be diminished. Immediate steps ought to be taken by the relevant authorities to reduce his power so that the doctrine of separation of power is restored to its proper place in the Constitution. This is one of your main concerns when you accepted the appointment as AG of Malaysia. I still remember, Tan Sri Thomas, you said to the public that the separation of power between the Attorney General Office and the Public Prosecutor Office is in your top list. But obviously, it had not been done until you resign from the post. So why it cannot be done during the 22nd month periods? I don't think UMNO or PAS, they will object to this reformation because at that time, they were also so scared of you. You are the most powerful man in Malaysia, as stated in your articles. So why this reformation cannot be done within the 22 months period?
Well, I think there's a simple answer to that. It required a constitutional amendment to separate the office of the public prosecutor and the Attorney General. And Tun Mahathir wasn't very confident that he would get the 2/3 majority. Now, of course, I know the Minister Syed Saddiq managed to get not only 2/3 majority, he got unanimous support for the under 18 under 18 vote and the compulsory registration. So I think probably if they had tried, if the PH government had tried to separate the office, they may have got the 2/3. But it's a political will decision. I supported it. I've always held the view that office must be split. I continue to hold that view, and I certainly wasn't an obstacle to that reform.
Yes.
Can I also say that the Attorney General's chambers, they themselves decided to have some kind of a referendum among their officers while I was there, and I think initially they were against it, but if I'm not mistaken, I think the majority who took part in that survey supported the splitting of the office. So I think there is so much more consensus over 30, 40 years of separation. So I think it is just a question of time before that happens. And
Yeah.
and it's a disappointment did not happen during our time.
Yes. 关于这个问题丹斯利的回答是很简单，因为需要修宪，而当时的首相是没有信心这个修宪案能够通过的。当然，他也提到后来温蒂·艾丁就是18岁投票也是要修宪嘛，得到朝野一致的通过。所以当时如果他认为我们尝试一下去修宪来分开总检察署的提控跟法律顾问这2个巨大的权力给它分开来，那有可能是获得通过的但是强调它不是这个分割总检察署权力的 obstacle 就是障碍他是支持的，而且他还记得当时在总检察署内部有公投 referendum 就是公投内部有公投，大家其实大多数人都支持分开的，所以其实有很多支持的力量，但是最终还是回到政治意愿啦，因为怕修宪不过关，可能政府就要倒台，所以他们没有意愿去做这样子的事情。So my next question, similarly, reforming agenda, others reforming agenda, such as to completely take out the Prime Minister role in Judicial Appointment Commission and relocate such role and responsibility to the CJ or ex-CJ because check and balance. We don't want the CJ has absolute power in his hand. This definitely will ensure the independence of the judiciary and also the equal and fair allocation for all members of parliament. Now, PH is begging for the ruling government for allocation, for equal allocation. But when they were in power, they didn't amend the law to ensure that equal allocation given to all members of parliament. And of course, the revival of Parliament Services Act to ensure the independence of the parliament. All this has not been done or achieved by the Pakatan government. And I think this is the fundamental reforming agenda which must be achieved by Pakatan during their tenure. 22 months, 5 years, they must do it. So what is the reason again? Was it because of Tun? Because after the government fall, PH has criticized Tun and said Tun is the obstacle. Tun have no willing to all this reforming agenda. He was not our side. He was the UMNO man. So what is the real reason behind this one? I think Mr. Thomas can give us a clear picture.
Well, unfortunately, I really cannot, because these are matters for the cabinet, and presenting a bill, deciding what laws to be presented to the parliament, what laws to be enacted. Those are all matters for the ministers to take, and they take that in the cabinet. And after they make a decision, they just instruct the AG or the parliamentary draftsman or others to start preparing those new laws. So as to the politics of the cabinet, as to who support law reform, I cannot answer that.
Yes.
But I can I also, in addition to the laws that you mentioned, I accept everything that you say. We also had sort of turn around on things like the death penalty, the Sedition Act, the MCMC. So there were quite a few of the laws that we wanted to repeal or totally abolish, even SOSMA, but we just couldn't get it through for various reasons. So yes, I mean that is a sad commentary. But as against that, can I just say, in their defense, that everybody expected the PH government to be at least a one-term 5-year government, and if they had governed properly, hopefully a 2-term 10-year government. So I think there was some calculation among the politicians that they had between 5 to 10 years for law reform, and they did not have to rush to do everything in 22 months. As I said, nobody expected the government to fall. And I think that was one of those problems too, which is often forgotten.
Yeah, thank you. 但是里的回答是这个他说其实他无法回答啦，为什么这些法案没有被修改，没有被改革，因为他没有在内阁里面他无法出席内阁会议，这个是部长跟内阁所做的权利 所以他不能回答到底是谁是阻碍，是谁不想要这些事情来做到，必须内阁做出决定了，他作为 AG 才能去根据他们的指示来进行他的职责，来进行改革。不过他强调有很多法律他是要废除的，他也提议废除，比如 SOSMA 但最后不能成功，里面有很多原因，这个等一下我会问到了。然后最后他也想说，其实这些政治人物他们都认为至少有5年或10年2个任期他们可以执政，所以他们会算计几时才是真正的改革时机，他们没有想到这么快就会丢失政权，所以这也可能是为什么这些改革 agenda 没有改革议程没有被执行的原因。Tansi Thomas, my next question. Some minister mentioned about deep state. Civil servants were reluctant to work with the Pakatan government and try to sabotage the administration. You have also mentioned in your book at page 236, I did a lot of homework, that as a newcomer to AG chambers, you realized that the public sector lawyers had a public service attitude and there was no incentive to distinguish themselves. And there were also rumors that you have been sabotaged by AG chamber staff because you were an outsider. You were not from the AGs. You were not there before, and like helicopter, you just landed there out of nowhere. And you are not even a criminal lawyer. So the staff in AG chambers that sabotage you. So are these true? Did you face the deep state and sabotage issue when you host a post as AG?
Well, I would like to clarify. I cannot remember using the word them sabotaging anything that I wanted to do. That's a bit different from them receiving an outsider. That I think I said. But insofar as your general point about the deep state, and I've been saying this a few times, I think the expression the deep state has been overused in the last 10-15 years, not just in Malaysia, all over the world. And I wonder whether the overuse of it has made it, in a sense, meaningless. Is it an excuse for a weak minister who has no idea of his own or who did not perform well, as an excuse says, I wanted to do, but I was stopped by the deep state. I personally think that the influence of the deep state is exaggerated. I think if you are a strong minister, you will get your way and you will say, look, I want this policy done, or I want to take this decision. And if you don't, if you stand in the way, I will transfer you out, the civil servant that is. So I personally think it is exaggerated, the effect, the influence of the deep state in Malaysia. But of course, we also know that there are other areas where they operate in military and police and whatever, that maybe their influence may be there. But in specific answer to your question, can't the ministers get their decisions done because civil servants are obstructing? I would say only up to a point. The minister can finally get his way.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. 他的答案是他不认为他有被背歌了，他也没有说过他被背歌哈。我刚才是说是谣言了哈，所以他没有说过他被背歌。但是 AG 的人 ，AG Chambers 的人把他当外人，这个是另外一回事。但他觉得这个不是什么大事，因为他确实是外人嘛。至于深层政府，也就是 Deep State 这个词，他说这10几年来已经完全被滥用，他并不认为深层政府不管在国内外有那么大的权力，有那么大的影响力，而他现在只是变成一个借口。这些没有能力、没有执行力、很弱的部长、很弱的政府会找借口推卸责任给这些深层政府，所以他认为深层政府的影响力在马来西亚已经是被夸张化了，是不正确的。So my next question, Thomas, one of the issue of your appointment was that you were the lawyer appealing for YB Lim Guan Ying, Secretary General of DAP at that time. I personally don't think this is a big issue, as you were also counsel for PAS in oil royalty case. So both sides you have represented them. What I want to ask is your relationship with DAP was, I think was better than others party. Before your appointment as AG, you have represent Lim Guan Yin, and you mentioned you are good friends with Lim Kit Siang for over 40 years. So, but in this book at page 366, YB Lim Guan Yin, as finance minister, has made a complaint against you to prime minister, and he was not satisfied with you. And also, your good relationship with YB Teresa Gok also became sour due to the EU palm oil restriction issue. This is at page 371. So my question is, how is your relationship with them and ODAP now? Are you still in good talking term with them? With Teresa Gok, with Lim Guan Yin, are still in good talking term?
Well, actually, I can't remember the differences I had with Minister Lim Guan Yin. I thought everything went well. I can't even remember any incident.
It's about the Petronas issue. I think the oil royalty 20%, Petronas go and seek assistance from Lim Guan Yin, and then Lim Guan Yin give you instruction.
Yeah. It is a minor matter. Yeah. But on the EU palm oil, yes, there were much more differences, because that was all about how does Malaysia present its case once the cabinet decided that they would challenge the EU law, EU directive, which discriminated Malaysian oil palm. And the cabinet decided that we would challenge this in the WTO. And because this is a legal matter, obviously it comes within the purview of the Attorney General as the chief legal advisor of the government. And having a lot of trial experience, I wanted to run the case the way I saw it. So that is where there were differences with the minister and the civil servants on the EU. Insofar as the thing is, because I've never been a member of a political party, I see these politicians at social functions. I've not met Teresa Gok since the election. I've met Lim Guan Yin a few times. Everything is fine, and I wish him the best. So there is no problem meeting them socially. I'm quite happy to meet them.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Thomas 的答案是他说他跟林冠英的分歧，他一开始不记得跟林冠英的分歧是什么，然后我也提醒是关于 Petronas 那个的28%石油税的 Petronas 不满意Mr. Thomas 他是同意要给28%的，所以他们去找林冠英投诉，然后林冠英就去找敦马投诉，他说这个只是很小的分歧，后来也解决了。而跟郭树庆关于欧盟限制中油的分歧就不一样，因为当时是整个部门他们要求的打官司的 strategy、 打官司的团队、打官司的方法跟 AG Chambers 跟Tan Sri Tommy Thomas 是完全不一样的，而且Tan Sri Tommy Thomas 他是律师啊，他有非常多的经验去打这样子的官司，所以他认为应该由他来决定但是郭树庆一直要插手，这些在书里面都有提到大家可以去看一下。然后最后Tan Sri也有提到其实他都有见到林冠英，然后当然他们的关系还是不错的啦没有变质还是怎么样。So Mr. Thomas, this is the last question for this part, this chapter. I have read your books for 4 times. 2 times for English version, another 2 times for Chinese version because the proofreading thingy. That's why I have a chance to check through all your comments in the books in regards to the leaders of Pakatan Harapan. Surprisingly, I found that you only praise 3 persons. One is Tun Dr. Mahathir, one is YB Sai Saddiq, and one is YB Liu Wei Kiong. I don't know whether you still remember. I have jotted down everything. You compliment 3 persons only. Others you mentioned like YB Lim Guan Yin, YB Teresa Gok, YB Saifuddin Abdullah, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, Zuraida Kamaluddin, all of them, which is something bad about them because they ignore your advice, they don't want to work with you, or they have different views with you and they don't want to concur and they make a complaint to Prime Minister. And besides that, many others leaders has been omitted in the book, such as Mat Sabu, Anthony Locke, and Azmin Ali. Their names almost omitted and not mentioned in your book. You did not comment about them at all. So my question is, how were their performance? Can you give the audience a brief overall picture of all these leaders and their performance in Pakatan administration?
Well, I think the reason I did not mention them in the book was that I think my dealings with some of them would have been very minimal. Although my dealings with Minister Anthony Loke for transport, I remember dealing with him on the MH crash matters, and then with Azmin Ali, I think probably on Petronas, but they were such short experiences. It did not warrant a description in the book, because at the end of the day, I was trying to write on some episodes. It wasn't a daily diary. It's really not a commentary on anything. It doesn't mean that I support them, or I like them, or I dislike them. What I would say as a general statement was that all the cabinet members were very, very friendly. They were very happy to receive my legal advice, whether they accepted it or something else. And I was very happy to give them advice. And often I would go to the ministries and meet the ministers over lunch or coffee and have a chat. So I would like to think that I had a good relationship with most of them, in the sense that I was trying to help them on legal problems. If they had a legal problem, I tried to help them. And likewise, the senior civil servants in most of these ministries, if they had a legal problem, I was happy to try and solve it. Because I spent my career as a barrister who by definition, tries to solve problems.
Yeah. 但是你的回答是他没有提到他们是因为接触很少，跟陆兆福有一点点接触是因为 MH370，跟阿兹敏是因为 Petronas， 但是没有提到他们因为接触实在是太少了。他写书不是一个日记不是记录所有的事情，他只能根据章节根据 chapter 来写，然后把重要的事情记录里面。所以他强调他写进去的都是根据事实所发生，他认为重要的需要记录下来的，而不是因为他讨厌或喜欢他们在他看来，他跟每一个部长的关系其实都很好，因为他的责任 as Attorney General as a barrister， barrister 就是上庭律师啦，还有作为总检察长是帮他们解决问题，尤其是法律问题，还有Senior Civil Servant 就是高级公务员，有法律问题，面对什么问题都会来寻求他的帮忙，寻求他的意见，所以他其实跟每一位部长的关系都很好，这个是丹斯利所想要回答的。So
Intel.